Man, just blow it up at this point. Blow it all the up. Like, I am so serious right now. Fire Nick, fire Howie, and trade Jalen to the Panthers for a third rounder and a McRib. And then throw that middle school Salisbury steak and barbecue sauce sandwich right in the trash along with the Eagles Super Bowl hopes. Like, at this point, nigga, just burn the whole city down. Like, I'm finna just jump off the Ben Franklin with concrete blocks tied to my ankles. Matter of fact, I'm finna run in the middle of Roosevelt Boulevard blindfolded in the middle of rush hour, nigga. Goodbye, cruel world. Goodbye, you miserable excuse for a football team. You now have a widow and 2 orphan preschoolers on your conscience because you couldn't beat a secondary missing salsa DJ Reed, a one-legged Garrett Wilson, and worst of all, Mormon Matt Leinart. All right. The Homer rant is done, y'all. Anyway, this week we're going to look at some of y'all's hot takes from this point of the season and figure out if they're fire and brimstone or tap water in an ice pack. So, yeah, man, let's do it. All right, so it's far enough into the week now that I can take my dramatic Homer hat off and put my analyst one on. So, yeah, I'm basically a Philly sports writer is what I'm saying. The Eagles are going to be fine. Relatively. This was just one of those games where God said, F y'all, it just ain't going to be your day, bucko. The O is not going to commit 4 turnovers in one game. Devontae is not going to drop 3 gimmies. And Jalen is not going to body swap with Zach Wilson in the last 2 minutes again. Most importantly, the injuries and play calling, Philly's 2 main issues right now, should improve by December. And more importantly, January. You know, when all the wins we stacked up in the first few weeks really start to matter. Honestly, the biggest issue with the Eagles isn't even the Eagles, to keep it a buck. It's the schedule. And I mean, if this team is really Super Bowl caliber like we think they are, then they should come out in November with at least like 3 dubs. So again, I'm not as pressed about that hell stretch as a lot of other folks are. I mean, yeah, 6-0 would have been a lot nicer than 5-1, especially considering that the Niners lost yesterday. But nigga, how can we call this a Super Bowl team if we don't do nothing but stomp out a bunch of tomato cans all year until the playoffs? Like, who do y'all think we are, the Cowboys? Okay, so yeah, like the Eagles, the Niners do definitely look beatable. But I mean, everybody looks beatable this year. So, I mean, if we've learned anything this past week is that there aren't any true juggernauts this year. Everybody has at least one team that's built perfectly to check them. And for San Fran, that just so happened to be the Cleveland Enablers. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was kind of conflicted as to who to actually root for in this game because, like I said before, San Fran might have the most loathsome fan base outside of cross-country Cowboy fans. But the Browns also gave $230 million guaranteed to a sex predator. But evidently, Deshaun is having a harder time getting back on the field than he does being a decent human being. So, yeah, seeing a slice of humble pie get shoved right down Shanahan's gullet was more satisfying than cowboy tears, is what I'm saying. That said, the Niners are going to be also fine, unfortunately. Brock Purdy is legit, and I'm tired of people pretending like he's not just because he looks like a recurring Happy Days character. Like, yeah, the counting stats look bad, but that's what happens when you're down Deebo Samuel and the odds-on favorite for MVP if there were anything close to justice in this world. More importantly, Purdy did exactly what the other top NFC QB didn't do on Sunday, and that's put his team in position to make at least a game-winning field goal. This was just another instance of God flipping the bird at a team just because he burnt his Pop-Tarts that morning or whatever. More importantly, San Fran's schedule isn't nearly as torturous as Philly's the rest of the way. So, yeah, as much as it pains me, I'll say that right now, San Fran is in the pole position for the 1 seed. I still hate y'all, though. Which now brings me to Detroit and probably my favorite take from the ones y'all gave. Right now, at this present moment in time, the Lions look like the best team in the league. And that's not a phrase I thought I would ever hear coming out of my own mouth. Just like, please, for the love of God, no more Jada Pinkett news. Like, Please, Jesus Christ. Nah, but for real, y'all, just take me back to the 90s, man. But that's the catch, isn't it? Looks like the path to the Super Bowl on the NFC side still goes through San Fran and Philly. And if you're not either of those teams, then probably both. Look, man, I like the Lions. I like y'all's meathead coach. I like y'all's once disgraced first round quarterback giving the biggest middle finger possible to the rest of the league, thinking he was nothing but a salary dump in that Rams trade. But mostly I like the way that y'all play. Like, y'all are basically the diet version of the Eagles. The game plan is basically we're just going to keep punching you in the mouth with our O-line and running backs. And once you finally realize that, hey, maybe we need to keep an extra defender or two in the box to stop getting our asses kicked on these halfback counters, boom, we're going to hit you over the top with a bomb to wing Dragon of Ra or Jameson, I'll take the under Williams. That's literally what Philly does when BJ isn't calling 45 passes in a game for God only knows what reason. Like, Jesus, Brian, you making this black QB video I got cooking on the other channel way harder than it needs to be, man. Like, get it together for real. The Chiefs are pretty bad this year, at least for the Chiefs. So, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with this, but what are we basing this on? Passing stats? Because, I mean, if that's the case, we got to consider that this is not the same Chiefs team from 2018, not in personnel or philosophy. What I mean is that 18 team was prime Pacquiao, and the one from last year was prime Mayweather. Yes, including getting bailed out of any real competition. Jokes aside, though, Manny was a knockout specialist, which is basically what KC did on their way to a chip a few years ago. Now they're just death by 1,000 cuts, which, I mean, that's basically what you have to do when your best receiver is not even a receiver technically. And even he isn't playing like the Travis Kelce we're used to seeing. I don't know, maybe that traffic cop stash is probably draining just as much swag on field as it is off it. But also, if y'all haven't noticed, passing numbers across the league are down compared to years past. And that's thanks largely to Gannon and by extension, Vic Fangio. I mean, there was a reason he got that Arizona gig to begin with, specifically that too high shell that lost us a chip, but whatever, bygones and all of that. But the thing is, that scheme doesn't not work. Like, it does exactly what it's meant to do. Take away the big explosive pass plays we've come to know and love since hitting Tom Brady became illegal. The counter to that is to either run the ball or use short passes like a de facto run game, or both. And who basically built their career on short passes, the running backs, because the receivers couldn't be trusted to catch COVID? Exactly. Okay, so going back to Detroit, yeah, KC doesn't look the way it has in years past. They definitely look a lot more pedestrian than they had before. But again, I still have them in the AFC Championship this year. But I also have them losing to the subject of the next hot take. All right, so not only do I have the Dolphins making the championship game, I got them going all the way to Vegas next year. And losing to the Eagles, obviously. Reason being, as JT O'Sullivan says, good O beats good D every day and twice on Sunday. Now, I'd argue that you need good D for a good O, but I mean, if your tongue game is on point, then never mind, we ain't talking about that. Whatever. Now, I know some of y'all might think I'm basing this on that 70-20 debacle, but I think at this point we can all agree that that had more to do with the complete ineptitude of the Broncos defense than how good Miami's O actually is. But I mean, that being said, Miami's O is good, like really, really, really good. And that's exactly why I think they'll beat KC. Right now, KC's D is the biggest reason for that 5-1 record. But remember, last year, they were literally middle of the pack on D while having one of the best offenses in the league and wound up winning the chip. That's just the way the game is played these days. And Miami basically has a track team out there that also just happens to know how to catch footballs. But more than that, they have a head coach who evidently sold his soul and his swag to the devil in exchange for constantly having wide open lanes for his QB to throw to. That's a championship recipe if you ask me, albeit a soul damning one. The Falcons will win the NFC South. Nah, nigga. Okay, so I'm going to lump these two together just because going back to Manning Leaf at least, when QBs go 1 and 2 in the same draft, they're almost always linked for the rest of their careers. God, I hate injuries, man. Okay, so maybe because I'm not in Carolina, I haven't seen too much hate for Bryce, but I will say that I am a little bit concerned now. Like, some of the decisions he's been making are like 2022 Zach Wilson bad. And that was supposedly Bryce's biggest selling point coming out of college, y'all remember? Like, you don't take a QB that's at best as tall as a troll doll, number 1 overall, unless they either have the accuracy of Drew Brees or the mobility of a 3-year-old. Just like I said with Fields, Bryce's struggles have as much, if not more, to do with coaching than his actual ability. Like, honestly, at this point, I would just shut him down if for no other reason than to preserve whatever confidence he has left. Because behind that O-line and with those weapons, or better yet, lack thereof, he's more likely to end up in a wheelchair than in the win column at this point. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, CJ Stroud is holding it down for the light-skinned niggas until Jalen gets his groove back. Now, I don't know about putting him in the same convo as Burrow because, I mean, the Terminator is still there, or at least will be next season probably, and I still think that he'll be the best QB from this draft. I mean, too bad he has to play for one of the extras in old school, but whatever. Stroud does look as advertised, if not better, though, is what I'm saying. But again, going back to the coaching thing, D'Amico is building a culture in Houston that a lot of people thought Gannon was when they beat the Dallas Fraud Boys. And I think that does as much for a QB's confidence as just scoring a bunch of touchdowns. Sports shouldn't be such a big thing. Well, I mean, neither should breathing, nigga.